Hello lovely people, and welcome to today's video. I might seem a little bit spacey, and to ground me I've got a little buddy. So if you see me fondling something, fidgeting down here with something red, don't be alarmed, it's my little friend. I am here today to talk about the books that I have read during May. I had a really successful reading month. I think I read about 14 books, you know, a mixture of manga, audiobooks, full-length novels, that sort of thing. So we've got a right mixed bag to be delving into today. The first of those books is one that I've since given back to the library, but I absolutely adored, so much so that I ended up filming a makeup inspired look for it and did a little review on top of that. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And it's How to Survive Camping: The Man with No Shadow by Bonnie Quinn. So as I say, really loved this one. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It is a campy, cozy horror summer camp novel that combines the idea of Welcome to Night Vale and the worst case scenario survival camp book. It is so much fun. It's got this dry, sarcastic sense of humour and this sort of lackluster attitude of, it is what it is, we live with these monsters in the woods, and that's that. And I really loved that energy. It was just so blasé. But as I say, I had the best time reading this. It was a highly rated read for me, and I will just link you to that video because I spoke high praises, I sung high praises for that one. The next one I read is one that I got as an e-arc, and it's the third book in the Clara Dawson mystery series. This one was A Bitter Betrayal by Emily West. I think I've reviewed almost all of the books in this series so far. So yeah, I'm just going to keep going on because I'm having the best time. So this one, so they're basically all, I guess, sort of standalone books within a series. So each book, Clara goes on a different mystery. It works in your favour more if you read from the first book in order, just because you benefit from the character growth that we get and the personal relationships that sort of transcend from book one. But also, you know, alternatively, I believe you can just jump into one. You will be at a loss in terms of who characters are because they're already fully established in the world, but you can just enjoy it for that standalone closed case mystery sort of thing that each story does go through. So this one is set in a haunted manor, and Clara and Tuck help their friend Vincent to uncover the mysterious death of Ophelia, who was a young girl that drowned in the lake on the grounds. Vincent has since bought out this property to further research his studies into the occult, specifically ghost hauntings and the other world, like paranormal side of things. And he has enlisted specifically Clara, but also Tuck as a sort of chaperone bodyguard to help write up his book that he's writing about such things. Of course, with Clara, we have a lady that is sensitive to spirits and ghosts, and Vincent is... Sorry, I heard a buzzing or a noise. There's a fly flying around. I've got all the windows open, it's so hot, and they're just piling in. Anyway, I don't know why they don't want to be outside, it's so lovely. Anyway, so yeah, he's hoping that Clara can loan some of her sensitivities to his aid and try and commune with Ophelia, because as I say, it seems like the place is haunted by this young girl. But there is a lot going on in terms of people kind of neglecting her, believing she was possessed and not really giving her the time of day. And there's of course so much more that becomes unearthed through Clara's abilities and just general research, speaking to people, and delving into this investigation that was originally a closed case that has been reopened from their insistence. This was ambient to a T. I feel like Emily West always has this way with crafting atmosphere, almost like a gothic edge to it, and it's always done to perfection, and this was no exception. Did get really pissed off at Clara for how cold she was with Tuck. So from early on you see that Tuck and Clara could have a blossoming romance. It is very, very, very slow burn, and there's always a sort of 1 step forwards, 3 step backs vibes, mainly with Clara and the insecurities that she has, and I would say childhood trauma with relationships and pertaining to her family, I would say, and her upbringing, that really stops her from being vulnerable with another person in that way and opening up kind of entirely. So in this instance I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have had close encounters with each other at this point already, and now you're just, it feels like you're stringing Tuck along, and it really infuriated me. Like in that moment I was like, Clara, you're being mean, and you're not only you're harming Tuck, but you're sabotaging yourself as well, and you deserve so much, right? But ultimately I really enjoyed how everything panned out, and kind of, you know, the conversations that Clara had with Tuck and with herself, and this allowance to kind of open up, which was, you know, what I wanted, and I'm glad that I got by the end. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read, I also have a review for. So I did a makeup and review video for volumes 1 and 2 of The Ice Guy and the Cool Girl, or his cool female colleague, again depending what version you've got, or if it's like the anime, I think it's got a slightly different name. And this is by Miyumi Tonagaya, and this one was volume 2. So as I say, I've already done that video, but it is another very sweet slow burn, but this one is office romance. It's about the descendant of a snow spirit and the aloof woman that works with him in his office. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. If you are interested in hearing some thoughts and feelings about the first 2 books in that series, then give that video a go. I also have done like a little cold icy kind of makeup look with that as well. Next up, another book that was, I think most of these are from the library to be honest, but this one I had physically out for the library, so it has since returned, and this is Memoirs of the Damned by Yasier Hayat. And this is one that I have been wanting to read for the longest time, and I'm almost compelled to do a separate video for it because I ended up having more thoughts than I was expecting to. I'm still umming and erming about that, but we shall have to see. Anyway, I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. It is an epic vampire story, and we're following Andros, who on a dark and stormy night, as everything goes, is given a choice that will spell either damnation for himself or for those around him who he loves. So yeah, it's almost akin to, you know, Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, but I would say this is more of a dull version. It is very much meandering, and it feels like a lot happens, but at the same time not a lot happens. We are spanning a lot of years, and we are reflecting both on Andros's human life and his vampire existence, right? And it's a weird one. Like, I couldn't help picking it back up and wanting to know what happened, but at the same time it also felt just, as I say, meandering, like not a lot of high action. You were sort of told things rather than shown them. That's the feeling anyway. Yeah, it was really oddly written, oddly formatted, dry, but I just couldn't stop reading, and I was finding myself intrigued. I feel like the vampires' physicalities were quite interesting. They seem to be more animalistic in nature, which is quite cool to see. Like the descriptions of like their claws and the way they physically looked was interesting, and how they sort of lost sense of humanity, and how that was reflected within their aesthetic. That was pretty cool. But as I say, I think I'll maybe come back to this one and do a longer video because I have a few different thoughts that I might want to share. I listened to an audiobook next. This was The Library of Lost and Found by Phaedra Patrick, and I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I'm not gonna lie, this was just something that I randomly fell on. I thought it sounded really cute and cozy with a little bit of magical realism, and I ended up enjoying it far more than I initially expected. So we are following librarian Martha Storm, who is always connected easier with books rather than people, which, you know, fair enough. Although it's not for without trying. She has tried, but she's constantly feeling overworked and overlooked, and it's not good. It's not good for her mental health. In fact, she's not even a full-time working librarian. She's a volunteer at the library. She keeps applying to have jobs when they come up, and the library manager is just overlooking her and saying she's too old for it, and they've got younger, newer people that will take it, and nobody ever lasts. But they know that they can rely on Martha volunteering her time without being paid, and that's why they're not accepting her on as a paid member, which is awful. And the library manager is such a dick. I really disliked him in this book. But Martha's life kind of gets turned around when she finds a beautifully put together, very familiar feeling fairy tale book with a dedication to her, signed by her grandmother, who, as far as she was concerned, died way before this dedication was written and dated. So this sends her on an adventure of her own, really, of self-discovery, of opening up hard family truths, unveiling them a little bit, and getting to the root of this mystery of what happened to her grandmother's elder and why this book has suddenly come into her possession. This was a captivating read for sure, and I just loved how self-discovery, was such a main theme, especially for an older protagonist. I couldn't really get a sense exactly of how old Martha was, but I feel like she must have been like 40s, 50s maybe. So it was nice to see her almost having her very own later stage coming of age, and kind of becoming more in tune with herself, and in turn of that, with her family, and also what she stands for, not letting people walk over her anymore, learning to say no, things like that. I just thought it was really refreshing, and really beautifully done. The stories of the fairy tales were interwoven really beautifully with the main plot of the story, but it was like a melancholy kind of sadness to see that this was pretty much what Martha had written and made up to escape her real life, and it opened your eyes a little bit to the upbringing that Martha had, and how the household was, being the not favorite sister, secrets, tensions within the family, a controlling father that was really tight on money and really restrictive on Martha and her sister having access to their grandmother, who was too eccentric and frivolous for the dad, and essentially cutting the grandmother out of their lives. And it was really harrowing, like, having those perspectives where you are reading from a younger mind, but I thought it was really well done, and it built up to this story so fantastically. Overall, it was a really rich and emotional story, and I'm so glad I listened to it. Next up, I listened to Orbital by Samantha Harvey, and this one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. So it's snapshot in one day in the lives of 6 Australian cosmonauts who have been selected to carry out one of the last space station missions before the program is completely dismantled. So this one was a difficult one. I almost had high expectations for it because I'd heard so much praise from a lot of people, but funnily enough, the people around me who had read it also felt similarly to me and were disappointed. Disappointed sounds harsh. So I did find it to be a really beautiful and moving story, but it wasn't as personally impactful and emotional on that level as I had expected it to be. It felt like a lot of the characters were just talking about home and Earth, which, I mean, understandably, you're stranded up in space, right? Like, you're gonna want to reflect and think about your loved ones, but at that point you might as well have just set it on Earth, because you weren't connecting to any of the characters, you weren't seeing any of their friendships up on the spacecraft grow, or how they sort of intermingled with each other. You'd hear of I think, was it the Russian base and the Chinese base as well, but you wouldn't really have much communication. I think they might have just left to go back home or something, but I thought you could have had more human interaction. If he wasn't going to go the alien route, which it very much wasn't that kind of story, we needed solid relationships between characters that we're following, right? Because I felt like I just didn't care. In saying that, it was really thoughtful, really poetically written. It was just not super compelling for me, unfortunately. Yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown. Next up, one that is the complete opposite end of a letdown for me, and a 5-star read. This is Brownstone by Samuel Tier and Mar Julia, and this is a sort of coming of age graphic novel. This is a sort of coming of age graphic novel about navigating your heritage even when you don't feel like you particularly fit in anywhere. This was absolutely beautiful. Our main character, Aminenda, is exploring her identity, having some found family experiences and learning how to tune into herself. She is half white, half Guatemalan, and she goes for the summer to meet this dad that she's never met before in all her 15 years. So it's a tough one, because obviously she's having a lot of resentment and build up and anxiety meeting this man that hasn't been in her life. She has a lot of questions of where was he, why wasn't he there, who is he? But she also learns quite quickly how much he puts into his community, how much he absolutely adores his daughter despite not being in her life, and finally gets a letter written in English, because there's a language barrier with him not knowing English very well and her not knowing any other language but English. So there's the frustrations there, especially as a young teenager. He ends up learning as she's simultaneously learning some phrases and some of the language, but he writes her a letter explaining everything, his history, their history in turn, and what happened to get to the point of where they are now. And it was absolutely beautiful. By the end, I was very much choked up. We had some gorgeous illustrations that just added to the mood and the overall storytelling, and I would very, very, very much recommend picking this book up. Next up, I have a book that I've done a review for over on TikTok and Instagram. I was on the Black Crow book tour for this, and they kindly sent me out a copy of They Fear Not Men in the Woods by Gretchen McNeil. This is a stunning edition, as you guys can see, which is signed as well, which absolutely made my day. So we are following main character Jen, who has left to go to sort of like the city to do her degree in forestry, conservation, ranger, that sort of stuff, right? 6 years prior, her dad, who she's sort of following in his footsteps in terms of career, went missing in a dense patch of woodland that he should know like the back of his hand. She is convinced that he's out there somewhere alive, living in the wilderness, probably not in his right mind for being so isolated for all this time. However, 6 years later, she is called back to her hometown, Barrow, to lay to rest his remains. Apparently a hiker had found some bones on a rather popular trail walk. They have been confirmed to be her dad. She's still not having any of it, but she goes down, she does the pretenses, she does all the niceties, but she's there on a secret agenda. She wants to go looking for her dad. And so when a group of her old school friends, including her ex-boyfriend, who has a bit of a rival career because he works for a timber company, you know, wanting to cut down the trees that her and her father was trying to protect, decides to encourage Jen to go to the woods and sort of pay homage and just respect to the trail, nature, her dad, a last resting place, if you will. She has other motives in doing this. As I say, she wants to look for her father, but she's not the only one within the group that has ulterior motives for this camping trip, and we soon find out why. Please definitely check out that review, as I go into depth. I talk about it quite extensively, and I absolutely loved it. Let's just say that now. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I wholly recommend this. Beautiful horror, really atmospheric. Love that it features trees and nature. It's kind of like an eco horror, nature horror story that is done fantastically well. Definitely recommend this. I also read 4 children's books, new children's books into the library, and I will be doing a separate video for those, but they are Little Miss Marple's Muddle at the Vicarage by Adam Hargreaves, Absolutely Fine by Emma Chichester Clark, My Mummy's Built a Treehouse by Gareth Peter and Izzy Evans, and My Very Own Space by Pippa Goodhart and Rebecca Crane. Okay, and then moving on to the second to last book that I read, that was Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This was my first Ava Reid book, and I did a buddy read of this. Oh, I should probably mention, I also did a buddy read of this one as well over on TikTok with my friend Sneha, and we had a great time reading this together. We used the story graph buddy read feature, which if you haven't used before is fantastic. It doesn't open up the other person's comments until you hit or go past that particular page count. Anyway, so yeah, I did a more chill buddy read with my in real life friend Chloe. We had like a bit of a reading date when she came and visited me, and then we just continued. She finished far quicker than I did, but yeah, it was nice to have a little reading book with her and talk about some of the things that were happening. So this, in short, really is a feminist retelling of Shakespeare's Macbeth, and I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I think we both felt similarly about this, and again, this is another one that I'm thinking I might have to do a dedicated review for, because I have some thoughts. It was more magical than I had expected it to be, and I did like that. I liked, you know, the history and the lore of the witches that Macbeth keeps company with, and also the lore of our new Lady Macbeth and how, like, her background. But it does feel very much like, you know, Macbeth is the central story. Also felt like the author was too concerned at keeping this retelling as authentic as possible, I don't know, to the original text. But in doing that, it kind of lost its own style. And I feel like with retellings, you should have liberties to express the story in any way you want. But I don't know, it felt like too much time was taken to write in a particular way that felt a little bit Shakespearean, that felt too close to authentic, that it just lost itself a little bit, lost that attachment that I could have had easily to a character like Lady Macbeth. So that's a shame. It fell a little bit short for me. It doesn't put me off picking up another book by this author. I think Study in Drowning is probably one that I would get to next, most likely, out of this author's backlist. But yeah, this one, it didn't hit for me, unfortunately. Okay, and the last book that I listened to was Heartless by Jenna Showalter. This was a bit of a random one, actually. I just saw, I think last month or so, it on my BorrowBox app, and I was like, let me download it, give it a go. And this is like a paranormal romance, romantasy sort of vibe. So, fueled by vengeance, Caesar, the unhinged one, Fae King of Midnight, has one goal, and that is to make his enemies and their allies suffer as much as possible. Cookie is a foul-mouthed gamer girl who morphs into a powerful Fae princess after a major surgery. It sounds really random. There is a little bit more connection as to why this happens and how this happens. It's a bit of portal magic, but that kind of gives you the brief kind of synopsis of it, right? This very much has this 2010s paranormal romance vibe. If you like that, definitely give this a go. It was nostalgic in that way, but the strange thing is that this was only released a couple of years ago from what I've seen. So it transported me back to like the days of Fallen and Twilight, that sort of thing, right? But yeah, it was easy to fall into story-wise, and I really liked the desire that these characters had for each other, and, you know, how passionate they were. However, Cookie, our main female character, just was so annoying. She was very much like, I'm not like the other girls, and this, that, and the other, and it didn't translate well to this Fae realm. Not that you can't be a strong, independent woman, but the gamer girl to Fae princess, it didn't work as well as I think was probably hoped for. It was fun though, don't get me wrong. I would probably give the second book a go via audio if it's available, but I don't know how quickly I'll jump into that. So my friends, those are the books that I read during May. Let me know what you have been reading. I would love to know, as always. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video soon. Bye bye.